It's June 2021, and the internet has suffered a great loss. Donald Trump's blog has passed away at the age of just 29 days, and somehow the world has reached a point where this constitutes international news. The blog, called From the Desk of Donald J. Trump, now joins a whole string of enterprises at which Trump has proven himself inept, including a university, a football team, an airline, a magazine, a board game, a mortgage company, a charity, a travel website, an MLM, a range of furniture for home and office, a line of men's clothing, multiple casinos, food and drink, the presidency of the United States, fatherhood, and existence in general. Already a failure as a businessman, a politician, and a human being, Trump is now also a failure as a blogger. I was there for the first great flowering of blogging back in the early aughts, when the September 11 attacks happened, and Glenn Reynolds' Instapundit blogs suddenly became enormous, and thousands of people suddenly felt the need to make use of sites like Blogger and software like Movable Type to follow in his footsteps and talk about the awful New World situation and express their opinions about it, many of which were also awful. Blogging in the age of George W. Bush and the Iraq War attracted and later created a bunch of actual professional journalists and communicators. Here in Australia we have the likes of Tim Blair, Gareth Parker, Tim Dunlop, and John Quiggin, who's still running his blog after nearly 20 years. But the big thing it did was enable millions of people, including myself, to play at being that sort of thing themselves. The internet transformed things. It democratized media so that pretty much anyone who wanted to put their opinions and ideas out there could do so fairly easily. You didn't need print or broadcasting technology. This was why the internet was amazing, and of course it was also why the internet was, frankly, one of the worst things to ever happen to humanity. Every dickhead could do it, and so every dickhead has. Anyway, time passed, the world moved on, technology changed, podcasting and social media and so forth emerged as the new way of doing things, if you wanted to just blast your thoughts all over the internet. And people don't seem to blog as such these days as much as they used to. There's other options now. People have things like Facebook and Twitter. At least most people do. Trump spent years abusing the terms of service of those two things, especially Twitter, because he was the president, so-called, and he could get away with anything, before his support for the January 6 Capitol riots finally provoked them to grow a pair and permanently ban him. So that left blogging, and so was born From the Desk of Donald J. Trump. Supposedly, Trump was going to be launching a whole new social network of his own, but the reality turned out to be somewhat less and a bit more old school than that. I have seen it said that Trump finally had the thing put out of its misery because he was fed up with it being mocked, but that implies people were actually paying enough attention to it to laugh at him. And that doesn't seem to have been the case. Hardly anyone seems to have made use of it. When he was on Twitter, you'd see him getting retweeted all the time, usually hate retweets to be sure, but even so, that still increased his reach. And I don't think I saw anyone do that with his blog, not even ironically. So it's not surprising that Trump knocked it on the head, although his people were quick to spin it as not being a bad thing as such. Jason Miller, Trump's spokesman, advisor, and apparently all-round shit person, came out and said the blog was, quote, just auxiliary to the broader efforts we have and are working on. What exactly that was supposed to mean, if anything, Miller didn't say. But it does kind of beg the question of why the blog didn't work, and part of it is probably that people have kind of lost interest in Trump ever since he stopped being president of Twitter. He hasn't been hanging over us each day like he used to, and frankly it's been nice not hearing from him. Obviously the more egregious members of the cult still love him, and it is problematic that so many Republican politicians seem determined to carry on his obnoxious legacy, But I don't think most people care as much now he's off stage. John Idarola on Young Turks noted that you had to make the effort to go to his blog. On Twitter, it was the other way round. He really came to you. So I was wondering, where might he go next? Because Twitter doesn't want him. Facebook have just announced they're blocking him for at least the next 2 years. He has a YouTube channel, but it hasn't been updated since, funnily enough, just after the Capitol riot. And I think if he was going to join Gab or Parler, he would have done so ages ago. And anyway, neither of those exactly have the mainstream market penetration he would want. And then it hit me where he could go. TikTok. TikTok probably wouldn't suit him because the videos are so short he would barely have time to put a coherent word together before it ran out. And TikTok did kind of preemptively ban him after the Capitol riot, along with all the other social networks. But if they did reverse that and let him in, the irony of Trump joining TikTok would be priceless. After all, Trump made such a big show of trying to ban TikTok in the US last year on the grounds that it was a Chinese security risk. Russian security risks are fine, but China was another matter. And I just think it would be hilarious if Trump did end up on TikTok, which is why I kind of want it to happen. And that is it for this edition of Inanimate Carbon God. Bye for now.